Well, hello. Since I get asked a lot about my time in the military, I thought I'd do a short 6 lessons I learned from my time in the Austrian military, the Bundesheer. Now, first off, a little caveat. I wasn't there voluntarily. We have mandatory service. If you're a male, you have to join. We have alternative service, but it takes longer. Also, I didn't like it, and my performance in boot camp was terrible. So now the first lesson was your body lies to you. What I mean with that? Basically, when you're doing exercise or something, you will notice, oh, I can't do anymore. In the military, especially in the boot camp, you will learn that you can do way more with way less sleep and way more stuff than you ever thought is possible. And this, I think, extends to other areas as well. So this was a very important lesson, especially later on for university. So second, your memory and emotions might not match. What do I mean with that? There was this particular instance in boot camp, I think in second, third, fourth week, where we were about to leave the barracks. A friend of mine and I sat in the car, and we were completely desperate at that point. We were completely exhausted, physically and psychologically. Everything was hurting, and we talked about this, and we both basically said, I don't know how we can sustain another week. And the funny thing was, a few weeks later, we talked about this situation again on a weekend, and it was like, yeah, I remember how what we said and how we felt is incorrect here. We remembered that we were desperate, but we didn't feel desperate anymore. Although usually when you have a memory of something, a part of the emotion came back or comes back. And in this type, it didn't came back. So it was like, what's going on here? We acknowledged that we know what we talked about, but we didn't felt this anymore. And I think for a lot of people, they actually forget not only what they said, they don't forget the emotion, they forget also what they said. And I noticed this with other people, and I also met different people who told me, very few actually, that say, I don't get it why most people talk now very positively about the time in the military. Because I was with them in the company and everyone was desperate, annoyed and angry. And this is where I think cognitive dissonance kicks in for some, and the memory changes to a certain degree. And later on in university I read The Seven Sins of Memory from Schacter, and then suddenly it kicked in, because your memory usually adapts to your identity, and certain aspects of your life are changed in your memory, and other aspects are driven more in the background. So this is quite interesting. Then the next thing is that, this is my personal impression, that most Austrians are actually not racist. Now it's very important here, we have mandatory service, so you have everyone from every walk of life. You have the youngest guy was 17 years old, and I think the oldest was around 30 or more. We had everyone in there. We had people with basic education, and we had lawyers. I think we had 2 lawyers, we had engineers, electrical engineering, we had a software engineer, we had everything in there. So you get a very broad view of Austrian society. And the most popular guy, or one of the most popular guys in our company, was actually someone from ex-Yugoslavia. So, and he got well along with nearly everyone. So it wasn't like, yeah, he only got away with the educated guy, or he only with that. He got away with nearly everyone. So this basically gave me later on the impression, well, it's not about where you come from usually. And this is the thing, I think, in Austria and Germany, we care mostly about if you do your stuff, if you work hard. And usually if you work hard, you might face some backlash initially, but if you work hard, we will accept you, no matter what. And if you're a slacker, well, you won't have many friends, even if you're blonde and blue-eyed. Because, well, that's not how we do stuff here. So, and I think gets often seen wrong because we have a very, let's say, performance-oriented culture, and we don't like slackers. And if you're from somewhere else and you meet your criteria, you're welcome. If not, well, it's not because we're racist, we are just performance assholes. So the next point is a social one again, and this is that most people can't afford alternative service. For me, it was never a financial issue if I join the military or go the alternative service. But in the military I learned there were many people, because they had jobs before, that they actually run into debt or had problems of financing their stuff. Because the salary in the military is extremely low, and I think also for the alternative service, and the alternative service takes longer. But you still have the rent to pay for your flat, for your car. Austria is very rural. The barracks are usually not close to the home location. So people who worked before had a major cut of their income, and they couldn't stay a few months more, which you have to do for alternative service. So I met people who said, well, I would have liked to join the alternative service, but I couldn't afford it. And since a party that has a name of social, the word social in it, usually goes more to do the alternative service, it clearly reflects how much they actually are not aware of the situation, how much they are out of touch. And if I hadn't joined the military, I would have never learned it. I would have never thought, because I was rather well off, that this could be an issue, that money could be an issue if you join the alternative service or the military service. But it clearly is for some people. Now, what I also learned is that school is pretty awesome. I had a rather tough school, and my friend too, we were in the same, and during the military we were like, oh my god, I want to go back to school. I want to have 4 hours of maths each week again and 2 hours of physics, because those were the toughest classes we had for 5 years, and it was like, okay, this was actually pretty awesome in comparison what we are doing now, both in boot camp and later on, because it was rather either exhausting or rather mundane. So, which brings us to the final part. After the military service, you might not learn what you want in life, but you have a clear idea now what you want to never do again, or most likely never do again. There are some people who will like it. And the same goes also, I think, for the alternative service, because you're basically forced to do something from the state, and this will definitely usually decrease your perception of the whole experience. I know from risk assessment, if you're forced to do something, you will assess the risk way higher of an accident than if you're not forced to do it. And in this case, I think everything you learn and experience there will have a negative slant to it, because you were forced to do it. And I personally think I saw this at university, because from my experience, the men were more driven than the women, which of course is also due to probably the fact that the men were at least 1 year older due to this fact, because you will lose 1 year in your education if you join the university, for instance. So in general, I want to say I'm not very pro, but also not very contra about mandatory service. I think it makes sense if it's done correctly, and this means that the why is addressed very well, and the why needs to be addressed on the society level and not on the organizational level. And usually in society, what I see, they usually blame the military, and they say it's a problem of the military. No, it's a problem of the society. If you respect the military correctly, then proper people will go into military. If you talk very badly about the military like we do in Austria, those people, the NCOs that will train the recruits, will usually not be very pleasant. Nor will the recruits have a very pleasant view of their NCOs prior to even entering there. So you create a very problematic situation from different values and views, and also how it's done. I mean, in my instance, there were NCOs who basically told us we wouldn't stand 1 week in a war, Austria would fall, which I think is complete bullshit. Because, well, if you look at a map, there's a lot of mountains, there are a lot of forests, and yeah, if you want to fight and defend Austria, or you want to prevent someone holding it for long, it's pretty hard and pretty tough, I think. So, but to a certain degree, I can understand their view, because yeah, they were probably not treated very well. So there are both sides to it, and I think this is a society issue and not an organizational one. So, thank you for watching, and see you next time.